Welcome back. We start a news bulletin from China, where the death toll from the new coronavirus has now jumped to 305. The Philippines has confirmed the first fatality by the disease outside of China. This report will now tell you more.
After travel curbs and evacuations, China is now facing trade suspensions as the country fights to contain the coronavirus outbreak. With over 14,000 infected in China and more than 100 infected in at least 25 other countries, the outbreak has caused mass global hysteria. Thousands of Chinese medics are battling the disease in the virus's epicenter, Hubei province. Mayor of province's Hungang City, Qiu Lingjing, is utilizing all resources to stem the spread.
The city's financial department has released 416.39 million yuan of funds for the purchase of medical equipment and medicine. We have cleared way for these supplies to reach places where they're needed fast, and we're making sure the distribution follows proper procedures and that they're acquired and distributed on the same day with a clear record.
Russia has suspended visa-free travel to and from China while suspending mobile phones imports from the country. Meanwhile, Germany has evacuated its 124 citizens from Wuhan city.
It is not particularly dangerous. We will wait and see. If it is a case, it's no problem because we know the passengers always had a face mask on. That's completely enough. We know about all contact persons. It's absolutely not dangerous. We know what we must do.
The UN's health body has advised against travel restrictions, saying they will hinder information sharing and medical supply chains. Beijing too has criticized travel restrictions, accusing foreign governments of ignoring official advice.
Meanwhile, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has sent a letter to China expressing his conviction that Beijing will succeed in its effort to combat the coronavirus outbreak. State media said Kim also sent regards to all members of the Communist Party of China and medical workers who are fighting the epidemic. He said Pyongyang is willing to offer support to Beijing. Kim also wished Chinese President Xi Jinping good health and wished the people peace and happiness. In reply, Xi expressed his thanks to Kim, his party, and the North Koreans for their support. In a related development, Pakistan's government says it will stay firm on its decision not to repatriate citizens stranded in virus-hit Wuhan. At a press conference, advisor to Prime Minister Dr. Zafar Mirza said the citizens will be quarantined for 14 days. He said they will return when they are found to be free of the disease. The advisor said the decision was finalized after a discussion between Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. Mirza said the country will soon receive the health kits which would allow Pakistan to detect the virus. Earlier, Qureshi assured Wang Yi that Pakistan stands firmly with China and will provide full assistance to Beijing. Meanwhile, Pakistanis stranded in northwest Urumqi due to non-availability of flights have been granted an 11-day visa extension by China. Moreover, China has reported an outbreak of the H5N1 bird flu in Hunan province, bordering the coronavirus epicenter Hubei. 4,500 chickens have died because of the outbreak so far, while authorities have culled nearly 18,000 poultry after the outbreak. Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs says the outbreak occurred in a farm in Shinang district of Shenyang City. The bird flu causes severe respiratory diseases in birds and is contagious to humans. According to the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, bird flu is deadlier than coronavirus with a mortality rate of over 50%. According to UN reports, bird flu outbreak in China in 2013 ended up costing $6.5 billion in economic losses. Moving on. A civilian has been wounded in unprovoked Indian firing in the Satwal sector along the line of control. The Pakistan Army's media wing says Indian forces are deliberately targeting civilians along the LOC. Pakistan's Foreign Office summoned a senior official from the Indian High Commission to protest the incident. It condemned the targeting of innocent civilians by Indian occupation forces. The Foreign Office said such senseless Indian acts pose a threat to regional peace and stability. It said, by raising tensions along the LOC, New Delhi cannot divert attention from the worsening human rights situation in occupied Kashmir. In a related development, Amnesty International says the new controversial Citizenship Act clearly violates the Constitution of India. The rights body's Asia-Pacific Advocacy Manager Francisco Bencosme made the remarks during testimony to U.S. lawmakers. During the testimony, Bencosme said the act is against international law and legitimizes discrimination on the basis of religion. Meanwhile, in another report, Amnesty said India is becoming a dangerous place for peaceful protests. It said a hateful, divisive, and dehumanizing rhetoric has been unleashed on protesters by the Indian government. It said Delhi has shown its disdain towards the right to freedom of expression by carrying out sweeping arrests under repressive and colonial laws. Prime Minister Imran Khan says Pakistan has played an important role in reducing tensions in the Middle East. In an interview, Khan discussed Middle East tensions, the Kashmir issue, and India's controversial Citizenship Act. Khan said there is a need to continue efforts for sustainable peace in the region.
There has to be some more of a permanent solution. At the moment, things are still tense, but for a time I feel that we have averted war. There was a time when it seemed that there could be actually a conflict, but at the moment it looks as if things are cooling down.
Moving on to the Middle East now. Israeli warplanes have bombed multiple locations in the Gaza Strip's northern Beit Lahia city. The Israeli army claims it hit targets belonging to the military wing of Hamas in retaliation to rockets fired from the region. No casualties have been reported by the Palestinian Ministry of Health. Israeli warplanes have targeted the Gaza Strip for the fourth consecutive day. Tensions between Israel and Palestine have been rising since US President Donald Trump presented his Middle East peace plan. Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas says his country will cut all ties, including security cooperation with Israel and the US. Addressing an emergency meeting of the Arab League in Cairo, he said Washington's Middle East peace plan violates the Oslo Accords. Now, this report will tell you more.
President Donald Trump's so-called peace plan for the Middle East has sparked anger among Palestinians. The plan called for two states with Jerusalem as Israel's undivided capital. Washington has called the agreement the deal of the century, but the Arab League at an emergency meeting in Cairo rejected the plan. It said it will not cooperate with Washington in the execution of the plan. Addressing the meeting, Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas said he will never accept Jerusalem as Israel's capital.
Simply by saying that Jerusalem will not be a part of Israel, I won't accept this solution, I will not accept it in any way, and I won't have it written in my history or in my country's history that I have sold Jerusalem.
The Palestinian leader said the plan is in violation of international agreements signed between Israel and Palestine.
Unfortunately, we will not be able to accept America after this long experience.
Following the Mideast plan, massive protests have erupted across the West Bank, with many protesters injured by Israeli fighting. Malaysia and Turkey have already rejected the plan.
In Iraq, President Barham Saleh has appointed Mohammad Tawfiq Alawi as the country's new prime minister. This ends over 2 months of political deadlock. The former Minister of Communications will run the country until early elections can be held. He will have to form a new government within a month. This comes as President Saleh's 3-day deadline for lawmakers to nominate a new premier ended today. The country has been gripped by 4 months of anti-government protests demanding an overhaul of the political elite. Amid the unrest, former Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi resigned in November, but he had stayed on in a caretaker role as rival parties struggled to agree on a successor. U.S. seems to be approaching new states as the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Kazakhstan to hold talks on bilateral and regional cooperation. He met Kazakh Foreign Minister Mukhtar Teobedri in the capital city of Nur-Sultan. Pompeo is on a tour of Central Asia as Washington competes with Moscow for influence in the region. Kazakh Foreign Ministry says Pompeo is also scheduled to meet President Kassym-Jomart. Ahead of the visit, Pompeo said Washington has an important opportunity to help Central Asian countries become independent. He said there is a lot of Chinese and Russian activity in the region. Pompeo will fly to Uzbekistan after meeting the Kazakh leadership. The U.S. says it will continue its efforts for a ceasefire and stability in Afghanistan. In a meeting with President Ashraf Ghani in Kabul, Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad discussed latest developments in the Afghan peace process. The Afghan President's office said U.S. envoy briefed Ghani about his recent discussions with the Taliban and Pakistan leadership. Khalilzad also met Afghanistan's chief executive Abdullah to discuss peace efforts. In a fresh round of talks in Doha, Taliban and the U.S. are trying to reach an agreement to end the Afghanistan war. Welcome back. 3 years after the Brexit referendum, the UK is finally out of the EU. Many British nationals lament their country's decision, saying it has made them weaker as a nation. More in this report.
Britons woke up in a country that's no longer a part of the European Union on Saturday. Many of them expressed apprehension about the future. Katie Higgins, a business consultant, says this is the worst thing that British citizens could have done to their country.
I've lived and worked all over Europe, and this decimates my career. I'm so sad that my children will never have the opportunity to work as I have done all over Europe. What more can I say? Without crying.
London resident David Bell, who voted to leave the EU, is more optimistic.
Absolutely, definitely. Our voters leave, I'm happy about it. It's great. We're going to thrive, it'll be all right.
Parisians also expressed sorrow about their divorce with Britain.
I think it is sad, a shame, and it really is a blow to the European dream. Sincerely, I would have preferred for them to stay with us, and I do not really understand their choice.
The UK and the EU are now in a period of transition during which their future relationship will be negotiated before 31st of December 2020. By then, the consequences of Britain leaving the European Union will also be clearer.
Bolivia's interim government has granted a safe conduct to 2 former ministers of exile ex-President Evo Morales. Former Minister of Mining Cesar Navarro and former Deputy Minister of Agriculture Pedro Damian Dorado were allowed to travel to Mexico to receive asylum. The former ministers had been residing in the Mexican embassy in La Paz, along with another 7 members of Morales' administration. The government said the detention of former officials was a mistake.
Unfortunately, there was a lack of coordination between the public ministry and the national police, and this morning, 3 days after the safe conduct was granted, the police waited for him at the airport and apprehended them.
In Libya, Eastern Commander Khalifa Haftar has confirmed participation in the upcoming 5+5 military commission talks in Geneva. This comes after the UN envoy in Libya, Ghassan Salameh, met Haftar in eastern Al-Jamma city. The UN-initiated committee will comprise 5 representatives of the Government of National Accord and 5 of the LNA. Its formation was announced at the Berlin Conference on Libya on January 19th. The United Nations says the purpose of the military committee is to negotiate a full ceasefire in the country. The meeting in Geneva was earlier scheduled for January 28th. The UN says a new date will be provided soon. A Malawi-based drone academy is teaching young Africans how to use the technology to support humanitarian and development projects on the continent. Students do not just learn how to fly drones, but also how to build them from scratch. More in this report.
Africa is a continent prone to natural disasters that's dotted with isolated communities. This makes drones an invaluable tool. They can be used to monitor crops, deliver medical supplies, and track wildlife. Ethiopian aeronautical engineer Lydia Elias has dreamed of using drone technology for this purpose.
After me learning, I try to teach my people. I also have an aerospace club, so I'm trying to transfer this knowledge to the students that are fellows in my country.
Ladia is a part of the school's first batch of 27 students. Over the course of 12 weeks, they will learn how to build drones, fly, and use them to collect data.
For a short time that I've been here, I've been able to create this drone because this drone is the drone which I made from my own ends through the use of provided aided materials. We provided all these materials in how to go about. Then I followed all the procedures until I make this drone.
The project is a part of wider UNICEF initiative to help young Africans gain crucial skills for the 21st century. The Academy plans to train 150 students by 2021.
Turkey has announced to seek new trade channels with the UK. Turkey's trade ministry said Ankara will be open to talks for a bilateral free trade deal through existing structures. Meanwhile, the EU has assured a non-hostile transition for the kingdom after the exit from the single market. In an open letter, French President Emmanuel Macron emphasized upon Britain's unrivaled ties with France. Brussels Brexit coordinator Guy Verhofstadt said EU will work to ensure it is a project the UK would want to be a part of again. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.